everyone, Luis and I are going to do a presentation on tennis today, so I'm going to provide you a brief history of tennis and going through its origin and foundation. Most historians believe that tennis is from France from the 12th century, but the ball was struck with the palm of the hand. This was called jeu de paume, and this is the ancestor of tennis. But it wasn't until the 16th century that the racket came into use and the sport started to be called tennis. The game became soon very popular in France and in England, where it was adopted by the royal family. In 1974, the first tennis equipment and rules appeared and remained very close to the modern one. Current rules have been promulgated in 1924 by the International Tennis Federation. They have remained remarkably stable for 80 years. A recent addition to professional tennis has been the adoption of an electronic review for a point, which allows a player to challenge the line. In terms of current tennis popularity, we know that tennis maintains the top spot as the fastest growing traditional sport in America for the past decade. This is why nowadays we can talk about tennis commercialization. Luis, our expert, is going to go through the tennis current economic position.
Thank you, Julia. The following chart shows major sport events market share in terms of revenue for 9 sports, but this includes ticket sales and broadcasting as well as for the revenues of 2011 for major sports. And the top 3 are pretty much baseball, Formula 1 and soccer. Baseball being the largest one with 28% of the market share. This followed by Formula 1, which is about 23% of the market share. And then soccer is the third one with 18% of the market share, which was around 223 million. Then tennis actually arrives in 5th position of the market share, which is about 8%, but you also have to bear in mind that in this actual graph of the major sport events, there is the NBA, which actually generates 2.3 billion, which is an outrageous figure compared to what the rest of the sports make.
And in terms of player salary, where does a tennis player stand compared to the other sports?
The actual table shows that the average wage for a football player is about 1.1 mil a year, and then for a Formula 1 driver it's about 4 million a year, which is quite a large sum. On the other hand, baseball is 3 million a year as on average, and then, for example, a Wimbledon champion like Nadal or Federer would get 1 million if they win it.
Thank you, Luis. And what about tennis in particular?
Tennis in particular, well, sport revenues have grown steadily over the past century. This is the case of tennis, which generates a lot of revenues, but obviously from different sources. The main source is tournaments and programs, which generates 38% of the actual income. And then we have private lessons, which is 21% of how much tennis makes. And then finally is the membership dues, which is 20% as well. But obviously this isn't it. They obviously got shops, stringing, sponsors, stuff like that.
Thank you, Luis. And now could you explain us how does a sponsorship generate profit?
Well, sponsorship are a very effective way to advertise their product and to generate economic profit and to create goodwill. And all fans pretty much relate each player to an actual brand or sponsor. For example, Andy Murray has Adidas and Head, and then sponsorship can also deliver increased awareness and brand building and propensity to purchase. So, for example, if you see Rafael Nadal or Andy Murray as an example, you'd buy their clothes, you'd buy their gear.
And now we're going to another question, which is who are the people who work for the tennis industry and how much do they get paid?
The following table shows how much people who work in the tennis industry earn per year. This is in the USA. We can see that there are many different jobs related to tennis. Also, there are people from every social class who work in the tennis industry. Indeed, there's a high difference between a club manager who earns around $46,000 a year and a court maintenance staff who earns about $14,000 a year. However, they all work in the same place.
And what about the governance structure? How is the sport currently organized in terms of body association?
Good question, Julia. Well, first of all, the 3 governing bodies, the ITF, the International Lawn Tennis Federation, the ATP, which is the ranking for men, and the WTA, which is the ranking for women. The ITF is the governing body of world tennis, made of 205 national leagues, which were created in 1913. Each of these countries has its own national league, their own way of ranking them, and it's pretty much the actual headquarters are based in London, but they used to be in Paris. This changed in the Second World War. The ITF operates three major national competitions: the Davis Cup for men, the Fed Cup for women, and the Hopman Cup, which is a mixed tournament. Also, they organise the four Grand Slams, which are the Australian Open, which is played on hard court, the US Open, which is played on hard court as well. So Roland Garros is played on clay, and Wimbledon, which is played on grass. On the other hand, the Association of Tennis Professionals, also known as the ATP, which was founded in 1972, actually protects the interests of male players and runs the men's ranking as well. And then on the other hand, Women's Tennis Association, the WTA, is the principal body for women's professional tennis, which runs the women's ranking. And then here we've got a graph which shows the event categories for the actual three governing bodies. Obviously there's Grand Slams with 4, and then there's ATP World Tour Final, which is 1, and then we've got World Tour Masters, which is 9, in like Paris, Madrid, London and other places.
My last question is about current issues. Is there anything interesting facing the sport?
Many current issues in the actual tennis business. The French Open actually presents quite a lot of issues because the actual stadium is quite small and the actual site is generally small. It's half of the size of Wimbledon. This is why the French National League, the FFT, have decided to renovate the actual site instead of moving. This is because it's become such a historical place, not just for players but for spectators as well. So many great finals have been played here. They finally also decided to enlarge the structure only during the event, and also 5,000 new seats have been created. Another solution, apart from obviously making the site bigger, could be, which is what Wimbledon do, that 70% of the tickets are done through application. So there isn't that many issues with tickets, they just kind of get given randomly for people who apply for them. And also another issue in tennis world is pretty much retractable roofs for the 4 Grand Slams. This has become a serious issue, but obviously not for Wimbledon and Melbourne, because they already have their own indoor court pretty much, which is essential. But it's probably around an investment of 240 million, and Roland Garros will probably have this around 216, 217. Personally, for me, the biggest issue, which hasn't even been solved yet, is the fact that tennis players have such a busy agenda. They're always travelling, they're always playing, and I think personally it must be so hard physically and mentally for them. Also, fans, they might actually lose the love for tennis because it's honestly on the whole time. There's so many tournaments, and how can we have faithful spectators by organising many tournaments without any break, and with tired, harmed, dissatisfied, or even missing players because they get injured so much because they play so much? Well, thank you, Julia. That's all. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Luis, for all this information, and thank you for listening, and I hope you learned a lot about tennis today.